Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today I want to talk about an interview that came out. I'm not even sure, maybe in the last few days. I don't know, maybe in the last week. I'm not exactly sure when the interview was released. But when I saw the comments, some of the main comments that came out of this particular interview, I knew it was something that I needed to discuss because as it's a topic that I chop it up on this quite a bit. I definitely had to, bring this to my public. Um, this was an interview featuring Eliane Dias. And Eliane Dias is the wife of one of Brazil's most legendary rappers, Mano Brown. So she was very candid about a lot of things that she was thinking, but it was two or three comments that I wanted to specifically address, and these comments also caught the attention of other Black Brazilian social media profiles. So today, I'm calling this video. I always thought he would trade me for a blonde. All successful Black men do that when they get money, says Eliane Dias, the wife of legendary rapper Mano Brown. Okay, so before I get into this video, make sure you like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell so that you know when I put up another video. With that said, let's get directly into the video for today so we can chop this up a little bit. So this is Eliane Dias. Eliane Dias. This is Mano Brown. Everybody knows he's one of the rappers in the legendary hip hop quartet Racionais MCs. So in a recent interview, Eliane spoke candidly just about her life, her success, but also her relationship, her how she feels she's been treated as a Black woman in Brazil, what it's like being a Black woman in Brazil, and these are issues that are always going to blow up in Black Brazil's social networks. So when I first became just started getting into Brazil, I immersed myself in just the music. Who are the top Black actors and actresses? The singers. Who are the public figures that I should know about? And it wasn't long. As I always tell people, I got into Brazil on Christmas Eve of 1999, and because of this book that I had bought on the African diaspora. And so soon after I started reading about race, racial politics, history of Black people in Brazil, Racionais MCs is one of the groups that kept coming up. This is a seminal hip hop group in Brazil. I'd say arguably the most influential hip hop group that ever came out of Brazilian rap. So besides, I'm going to talk a little bit about Racionais in a minute, but the other thing that I wanted to speak on is the topic that I address on this channel, frequently, is the ongoing issue of interracial unions and what they call palmitagem. It's a term that came up maybe around 2012 and 13. And the frustration of Black Brazilians, particularly Black women, in terms of how they're presented, the image that they have in Brazilian society, particularly in the media. Black Brazilian women always see themselves as being like, wow, Brazil has always cast us at the bottom of the pyramid in whatever, we'll say, whatever category that we're talking about. So let's first talk about the Racionais MCs, this group right here. In video after video, I always describe the importance of Racionais MCs. If I could, compare them to any particular group, I always describe them as like a mix between NWA and Public Enemy. Their rappers are well known. Everybody knows who these four guys are. So the Racionais MCs is a legendary hip hop quartet formed by members Mano Brown. This is Mano Brown here. Icy Blue, Edgy Hawk, and DJ KLJ, formed in the megacity of Sao Paulo in 1988. 1988, of course, for many of us who grew up on hip hop, 1988 was one of we can call it the golden year of hip hop in American rap. Just so many classic albums in American hip hop came out in 1988. And I found it intriguing that Brazil's greatest rap group formed in 1988, that very same group. There's ongoing debate. Well, I'm not even going to say debates, but people consistently have listed their favorite albums of 1988. That was just a year that hip hop became, let's say, a formidable part of Black culture. It solidified its force in music. for a genre of music that many critics have said for years that this genre will never last. It's a flash in the pan. Of course, we know that hip hop made its debut in the late 70s officially, but by 1988, it was making groups were putting out albums that were considered the top of the genre, and some of these albums continue to be some of the most classic albums in American hip hop history. Okay, how many of those albums from 1988 can you name? Particularly, I'm talking about NWA and Public Enemy. I'm not just saying. Obviously there were numerous other groups that came and presented some of their best work in 1988. But 1988 was the year that NWA blew up. With Straight Outta Compton. Public Enemy released its album "It Takes a Nation of Million to Hold Us Back." So these were big albums. So I just found it intriguing that the Racionais MCs came out in that very year. So through rhymes and dramatic beats, the group's songs have been able to give voice to the oppressed and understandings of the complexities of a country like Brazil. Since 1988, no other hip hop group has been more influential in portraying differences of race, class, regional differences, and political views better than this quartet. Another photo of the group. In the years that I have followed Brazil, or since the year 2000, I cannot give an accurate number of how many lives the lyrics of this group have touched. Online and website comment sections, blogs, social networks, you can find thousands of comments by Brazilians, maybe tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of comments about this group, especially those who are poor Black, living in favelas or other poor communities throughout Brazil, saying how these MCs gave them a voice, explained poetically what they may not have been able to express on their own. And even for many, they came to see themselves as Black after discovering the lyrical poetry of Racionais MCs. Okay. So one of the most well-known rappers of the group, again, is Mano Brown, whose wife that I'm talking about today. So this is Mano Brown. Dude has a very popular podcast these days. He's a businessman. A lot of Racionais MC's products that's out there. Like I said, the group has been in the game since the late 80s, early 90s, and you could argue that they're still hot today. The other thing I want to point out about Racionais MCs is that they brought a Black consciousness to a Black population that was encouraged to deny being Black. I've always said that when I first started going to Brazil, a lot of people had never heard of their own Black Brazilian heroes. They were familiar with international Black heroes, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, the Nelson Mandelas of the world, the Black Panthers. But Brazil has its own Black leaders. Here it is a few decades after that, and people are more familiar with Brazil's own well-known Black leaders, whether they were from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, going all the way back to the 30s with the Frente Negra Brasileira. So this is something that I first noticed when I first started visiting Brazil. Even people who were not necessarily into the Black consciousness movement, they were familiar with Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers, and figures like that. It took a few more years for people to understand who were people like Brazilian heroes like Abdias do Nascimento. Nascimento is the man whose work introduced me to racial politics and the history of Black Brazilians, because his books were some of the few that were available in English by Black intellectuals coming out of Brazil. You have Lélia Gonzalez, important anthropologist, put out numerous works. A lot of Black feminists identify with Lélia Gonzalez with some of her works. Carlos Marighella was like a communist revolutionary. I don't necessarily see him as a Black leader per se, but after people came to discover his history, particularly in the 60s, he became like one of the people on the Mount Rushmore of top Black leaders in Brazil. Then you have Luis Gama. Now, there were films about Luis Gama and Carlos Marighella in recent years. Racionais MCs actually did a video that was based upon, I think it was either a film or a documentary about Carlos Marighella, popular film about Luis Gama, a popular figure from, he was born in, I believe, the 19th century. I kind of liken him to like a Frederick Douglass, if you need to understand his importance. He was an abolitionist. He was a lawyer who he didn't manage to get his law degree because Black people were barred from being able to study at important law schools in Sao Paulo or in Brazil in general. People have recognized his importance, particularly over the last 10 or 15 years. As I said, there was a film about his life. Had to have been, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. So these are some of the album covers of some of Racionais MC's most important works. You can see, you can translate some of this stuff yourself, like, Holocaust urbano, meaning urban Holocaust. You have sobrevivendo no inferno, meaning surviving in hell. These are some of Racionais MCs. Anybody who's a follower of this group are going to have these albums right here. Today, even outside of Brazil, hip hop fans are beginning to discover the work of Racionais MCs. On YouTube, I've seen a number of people, not even just on YouTube, on Instagram as well, particularly Black Americans who have discovered Racionais MCs. I see them translating the lyrics and reacting to some of the beats, some of the sounds of Racionais MCs. I mean, this group definitely belongs in the, how can we say, they deserve their place in terms of important hip hop groups that have made important contributions to the art form. Racionais MCs, anybody who's into Brazilian music is going to know who this group is, right? They're still selling out arenas today. Anyway, let's get into what Eliane Dias was talking about. She says, I always thought he would trade me in for a blonde because all successful Black men do that when they get money. So let's just talk about, I want to get directly into what she said. She says, this is taken from, I think it was it Revista Trip? I think it was taken from Trip magazine, TRIP. And it says, I spent my whole life thinking that Pedro Paulo, which is the real name of Mano Brown, her husband. I spent my whole life thinking that Pedro Paulo, aka Mano Brown, would trade me in for a blonde. All Black singers, soccer players, and actors did that when they start making money. They do that when they start making money, I should say, because this is something that Black Brazilian women, particularly feminists, have been pointing out. Like I said, the issue of what they call palmitaging has been being discussed since at least 2012 or 13, maybe longer, but this is when I first discovered the situation. Understand, when I first started getting into the situation with Black Brazilians, I was always led to believe that interracial unions were not a big deal. It's just like, okay, we mix here, we're not like you in the US where you segregate everything. But then when I started getting into Black media in Brazil and I started seeing the comments by a lot of Black Brazilian women, I started seeing, something that would go down. It's like every time a popular Black male entertainer would get married to a white woman, it became a big discussion online. And I says, oh, I didn't know it was like this. I knew that interracial unions were pretty common in Brazil, but I was under the impression that, okay, Black people was just all down with this program until I started seeing some of the comments where Black women were definitely not feeling, why is it that all the prominent Black men seem to be marrying white women, or in Brazil, we say near white women. When I became aware of the topic, I just started looking around. I'm like, wow, started looking at some of the star soccer players, the musicians, the actors, the singers. I started seeing lawyers, doctors. Now, of course, this is a small percentage of Brazil's middle class. The most successful men in Brazil tend to be white or something near to white. So then when you find a smaller population of successful Black men and you see, it was no exaggeration. I know people talk about this in the United States, but literally the further I dug into the situation, I'm like, seems like 98% of successful Afro-Brazilian men were married to white or off-white women in Brazil. That's when I had to start diving into it. If you go over to blackbraziltoday.com, again, about 4,000 articles over there, you'll see that I've covered this topic for a number of years because it is a big talking point. Black men have pushed back and shown like, look, don't just fault us. Black Brazilian women prefer white men as well. They just don't say it publicly. But anyway, this is not the video for me to talk about that. Go over to blackbraziltoday.com. You'll see a lot of articles about this topic, as well as the videos that I've already done on Black Brazil Today, the channel. So let's continue. Another photo. So Eliane Dias has done a lot of interviews on podcasts. You can go, if you understand Portuguese, you'll find her in quite a few videos on YouTube. She continues. Coming into a party holding hands with a white woman was a plus in his career, revealed Eliane Dias. She's a lawyer, a businesswoman, and the CEO of Boogie Naipe. In a recent interview with Trip magazine, Boogie Naipe is a cultural production company founded by Dias, her husband Mano Brown, and two other partners. Okay, so listen to what she said. I have a few pieces, a couple of links that I'm going to put up. That everything that she's saying is stuff that Black women have been talking about for a number of years. So she's talking about how she feared that Mano Brown, as how Black men often are accused of doing, they're with Black women when they're poor and nobodies, but when they get some money, wealth, fame, they become a part of Brazil's elite. Now they drop the black women who were with them for years, and they put a ring on the finger of a white woman. This has been the complaint of black Brazilian women for decades now. This is Mano Brown and his family, his two kids here and here, and his wife Eliane. Eliane, who has been married to Mano Brown for more than 3 decades, also discussed how racism and a profound lack of representation of black women hindered her career and affected her self-esteem. She says, "I never felt pretty and I still don't. If I competed with white women, I was too black. Among black women, I wasn't black enough," said the businesswoman who modeled for 5 years. Another topic that I've talked about frequently here, in Brazil's modeling industry, you see the top models in Brazil, they're always going to be white, blonde, or brunette, or whatever. In the beauty contest, you're always going to see majority white women winning the contest, as I've said repeatedly. Since 1954, when the Miss Brazil competition started, there's been 70 years of Brazilian women winning the Miss Brazil, and there's only been 3 black women who have won Miss Brazil and been crowned to go on to compete in the World Miss competition, right? This is an older picture of Eliane Dias with Mano Brown when they were younger, of course. Dias also pointed out how the lack of representation continues to impact the self-esteem of thousands of girls and women across Brazil. "I turned on the TV today from 8 a.m. to noon, and I couldn't find a single black woman on the news and morning shows," she said. Another topic that I've talked about. There are a few well-known black journalists in Brazil today, males and females, but it's still a small percentage compared to all of the journalists that appear on television in Brazil. A lot of people will be familiar with the story of Gloria Maria. Gloria Maria, I think, died a couple of years ago. She was like the top most well-known black journalist in Brazil. She was probably the first and most well-known. I think she came out sometime in the 1970s. As I said, she died a couple of years ago. Nowadays, we have people like Maju Coutinho. There's a number of black male journalists, but in comparison to white Brazilians, it's still minuscule in comparison, the representation of black journalists on TV, okay? A mother of 2 children with the legendary rapper Eliane has constructed her own successful career, being voted the best music entrepreneur in 2017. Speaking more of how things typically go in Brazil with black male entertainers and athletes, Eliane revealed that she would have liked to have had more children, but she decided against it due to the fear of being abandoned and becoming a single mother. "Only much later, when I told him about my fear, did he, Mano Brown, say he never thought about leaving me." So listen to what she said there. Her fear that one of the most well-known, successful black rappers in Brazil would leave her for a white woman, or specifically a blonde. She decided to only have 2 children with him because she was afraid that if he leaves, she'd be responsible for more than 2 kids. She says, she can deal with 2 kids as a single mother, but to deal with 4, she didn't want to risk it. So that's why she only had 2 kids with Mano Brown. Mano Brown, put her in security, says, "No, I never even thought about leaving you." But think about the psyche. Think about the visual of seeing so many black Brazilian men, prominent black Brazilian men, marrying white women over the years, how this must have affected how she felt and the decision that she made in terms of how many kids she's going to have. That's pretty deep, okay? Another photo of Eliane with Mano Brown at an event. With her own maturity and understanding, Eliane came to understand that true beauty lies in people feeling good about themselves. She says, "Beauty does not come from the ratification of others. What is beautiful is being happy with yourself." Okay. So really short article I wanted to discuss today, because Eliane said a lot of the things that I've spoken a lot about over the life of this YouTube channel, as well as at blackbraziltoday.com. I also wanted to point this out because this same conversation is going on in the United States. We know, I just saw this a couple of days ago, a popular black athlete, I think he plays for the Washington football team. I can't keep up with their name is anymore. I always remember them as the Washington Redskins. They became the Washington football team, and I think they have another name now. But one of the players got down on one knee and put a ring on, looks like his blonde girlfriend. People hit the wall when they saw that. Black women were outraged, like, another black man. Why are all these black men marrying white women? And so you go to YouTube and you just see this is a topic that's, is still hot on the internet. Why are black athletes only dating, marrying white women? Why black athletes choose white women? All of these short videos go into this. Why do black athletes choose white women? Viral debate reaction here. Then I want to get into this video. A black woman says black men athletes are pressured by agents to date white women or light-skinned black women. to obtain brand deals. I'm going to get into that video because it speaks to what else is going on in Brazil that could be causing so many prominent black men to marry white women or like off-white women, because a lot of the women in Brazil, you don't necessarily see them as white, but a lot of them are. Is this why black celebrities marry white women? Umar Johnson has been very vocal about this. He said something, Umar has a lot of content out there, so I can't always remember when he said something, but he talked about how he sees a situation where it seems like white women invest in black men that a lot of black women don't want when they're nobodies. He's arguing that black women in the United States want a finished product before they'll give a black man an opportunity to get with them. Whereas what he's saying is that white women will see a potential in the guy, and get with him, seeing that this guy's going to have a bright future. So I'm going to lock him down right now. Is there any validity to that argument? I mean, I've seen a number of black men over the years go online, talk about how black women just didn't give them the time of day. And it was white girls who, saw something in them. I have my own personal opinions about that as well. But as I'm saying, Sister Phil, she cracked the code on why black athletes get with Becky in college, on and on. This guy broke the internet some years ago. Now, what did he say? He says, this is incredible because the video was on YouTube and then it went viral. And I guess on Fox News, Channel 26 in Houston, they covered his video. Do black athletes prefer white women over black women? So they actually covered his video on TV. He broke the internet as well, and he got into it. He says, look, white women do this, they do that. Things that black women won't do, things that black women won't accept, white women are doing it. So don't complain when these athletes, he had connections with top, college athletes who had great chances of being able to go pro. And he's explaining like, look, I'm dating a black woman, but these men are dating non-black women for these reasons. So, it is what it is. It's a hot topic that's going on in the United States right now. People calling particular types of black men corny when they were nobodies, but then they go on and become somebody, and all of a sudden, okay, how come you dating those white women? A lot of those times, of course, there are black men who are going to have preferences for white women. I'm not denying that, but there are also cases where black men have a preference for black women, but the type of black women they wanted to get with just didn't give them the time of day when the white woman did. Ongoing debate. So this is what Eliane Dias was talking about. Again, you go to my blog, you see a lot of this. These are some top black Brazilian soccer players. This was a video. This was a picture right here that it's 9 different pictures of well-known black soccer players in Brazil married to white or off-white women. And there's more pictures here. I actually featured this article a couple of years ago. Well, probably 10, 12 years ago, because my question was, why is it that it seems like every time a black soccer player experiences racism, and he points it out, you check out his partner, he's always married to a white girl. Same thing with Indrique, the young soccer player. He just recently, I think he turned 18 like a couple months ago. He signed a huge contract. The girl that he's with is like 2, 3, 4 years older than him. His mother rejected, she was against the relationship because probably she saw the girl as a gold digger. Right. So, yeah, I'm not denying that black Brazilian men have long been indoctrinated to go after the white girl because that's the one that society deems as the standard of beauty. She's supposed to be the one who's your wife, particularly when you're a successful man. So, this is the former president of Brazil's Supreme Court. And, you just see picture after picture of well-known soccer players. This guy was married. It's a controversial topic because from what I understand, this guy was cheating on his wife, but they put him on the cover of Brazil's only black magazine because he seemed to have a consciousness. He's one of the few top name black soccer players who was married to a black wife, has black kids, and on. You just see more and more of these types of pictures here. If you remember, I don't remember what year that was, some years ago, on YouTube and on the internet in general, I know there was a lot of talk about, I think was it the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFL football team, where people were saying they showed a picture of the wives and girlfriends of Philadelphia Eagles players. As we know, there's a lot of black players on the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was like, they were saying it was like not a black woman in the bunch, or if there were just a few. So something like that had already happened in Brazil. I remember it was back in 2019 when the internet was abuzz, when they showed the girlfriends of one of Rio de Janeiro's top soccer teams, Flamengo. So this was these are some of the pictures of some of the wives and girlfriends of the Flamengo soccer team in Rio de Janeiro. Now, I'm not saying all of the players on Flamengo are black, but a large percentage of the players of that team are black. So see, like I said, for some people, some of these women might be considered Latina in the United States, but some of these women would be considered white. This is the only black woman that I saw, Hugo Souza, with his fiancee Natasia Brito in September. It's one of the few clearly black women that I saw. Okay, you see more black players, wives and girlfriends, another black player, another black player, another black player here. It goes on and on. All of the players, whether they're black, white, or racially indefinable, they all seem to have white girlfriends or something that was close to white, with the exception of 2019. This is another article, say the women of the Flamengo soccer team, they got together to take a picture in the final of the Copa do Brasil soccer tournament. Again, you don't see, I can't see any black women in this picture. I really don't. Some of these women may not be considered white in the United States, but they definitely would be considered white in Brazil. Even if they're considered what we call mixed race or pardas, they still lean more towards the white side, which brings me to, again, another discussion of what we call palmitagem, what black Brazilian women, particularly feminists, defined as black Brazilian men's predilection and preference for white women in long-term relationships for the construction of families and having kids. Whole lot of discussion about palmitagem. This article right here is one of the most important on the blog because it's a black Brazilian man from Rio who he talks about growing up in Rio and how the culture, it was just embedded in the culture that black guys, they might ficar, they might get down with black women and black girls, but when they wanted to have a relationship to show off to their buddies and friends and to marry and have kids, they went after the white girls. And this guy documented, he was like, I know palmitagem exists because I'm an example. We need to recognize our palmitagem and a preference for white skin. These articles go on and on. People are now talking about how can we construct black love here after we've been indoctrinated to prefer whiteness for so long. This girl right here, I did a video on this. Black love can't heal us until we deconstruct our adoration of whiteness. This is, again, the guy Enrique. I told my friends that I like him blonde. 17-year-old soccer star Enrique gets roasted online for his dating preference. Why is it that this is even in the LGBT community? Why is it that we black lesbians only have relationships with white girls? Said this actress, Thalita Caralta. Okay. Go over to blackbraziltoday.com. Just punch this in. This guy that I commented on, I turned this into a video as well. His comment, he says the problem with interracial love, we're very good at producing new rich white people, but we don't produce new rich black people. What he's saying is that as prominent black people get money and they marry white, their mixed kids go on to marry white, and those kids go on to marry white. And this black wealth that was generated automatically goes back to the white community within 3 to 4 generations, what he's saying. So we can't produce black rich people because we keep turning over our wealth over to the other side. And this I want to speak to about what Eliane Dias said in the video I was just talking, or the article that I was just talking about in her interview. This guy, in this article, it says, yes, interracial love does exist, but some black people also use white people as a social passport to feel more accepted. Is this what Eliane Dias was talking about? She said that having a white woman is a plus in the career of prominent black men. So the question is there something else going on here as to why, beyond the fact that they've been indoctrinated to pursue and prefer white women, is there something else going on there that can lead them to more acceptability and more marketability? Is that part of the reason why you see so many prominent black men in whatever genre with white or off-white women? Right now, I want to bring in the video that this particular black woman, this was some months ago, it might have been 6 months ago. I don't remember the date the video was released, but she said, working behind the scenes, she sees how managers and agents actually push or encourage black athletes in the NFL and in the NBA to marry white or very light-skinned black women. Let's look at what she had to say here.
So the NBA draft just passed and everyone's still wondering about why every single professional athlete seems to have a white girlfriend or a girlfriend who's like super, super light skin, almost white. So I worked a whole entire year in marketing and sports for professional athletes, but I also live in Miami, so I've met a lot of like professional athletes as well just because it's Miami. And let me tell you something. When there's a black man, especially a black man who's come from a predominantly like black community, right? And he's about to go into the NFL, NBA draft, whatever the case may be, and they're waving millions of dollars in his face for endorsements, brand deals, sponsorships, whatever the case may be, the brands most of the time want proximity to whiteness. So that means whatever the brand wants, they're going to get. And especially when you have managers and agents who are like money driven and who know they're going to get that 3 to 5% cut off of that athlete, they're going to encourage the athlete to date a white woman. They're going to encourage that athlete to date women who are very, very light skinned and also have a very classy persona on social media, because that's what brands are going to pay the most money for. Because a lot of times when you have athletes, especially who come from like predominantly black communities and a lot of times low income communities, and this is kind of like their golden ticket out of the hood, if that makes sense, they're going to do whatever it takes to get that money, especially when there's millions of dollars on the line and they're not used to money.
Okay, again, so you heard what she had to say. So is there something else going on here? Is it possible that the same thing influences Black Brazilian men in Brazil, particularly in entertainment and in sports? Is there something else going on behind the scenes? I mean, as I said, when I started digging into this, I was just amazed. To me, in the United States, and, statistics go back and forth. People bring up stats to show whatever, but it still seems to me that Black athletes in general are still majority married to Black women, whereas in Brazil, it's the exact opposite. I thought it was just a handful when I first discovered this topic, but as I started digging, it was literally hard to find a prominent Black Brazilian man married to a Black woman. I just didn't see it when I started digging. A friend of mine who's also followed Brazil, we were always just overwhelmed, blown away by how widespread this popularity of prominent Black men marrying white women was. It's like, God, it's hard to find one who's married to a Black woman, particularly a Black woman who's darker skinned. What else do we have here? The incredible case of a Black pomiteiro. He doesn't want a commitment, but radically changes his mind when a white woman enters his life. This is another thing that Eliane was talking about. It's another thing that a lot of Black women talk about. This is an article from the Blogueiras Negras website. This is from years ago. And this is what they're saying. Not only do Black men step over Black women to get to white women, it's also, well, I don't want to have a commitment. I'm not commitment material. I'm not really feeling a relationship right now. They won't hold hands with this girl in public, the Black girl. They want to do their thing in secret, spend the night, but don't assume a relationship. But then suddenly, a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months later, that same guy who didn't want to be in a relationship, now he's with a white woman publicly. So I thought you didn't want to be in a relationship. Well, he didn't want to be in a relationship until the right white woman came along, which is, that's what this article was talking about, right? Yeah, he doesn't want a relationship until the white girl comes along and chooses him, right? Then Eliane Dias also talked about when she woke up a particular morning and turned on the TV, she can't find any Black women, in the newsrooms, presenting morning shows or whatever. I've talked about, of course, Gloria Maria, who died a couple of years ago. She was one of the few prominent Black women in the media that, that was a prominent journalist or hosting a TV show. So when you punch in, apresentadores mulheres do TV Brasil, like, female television host, news programs, and, talk shows and variety shows, they're all going to look like this. So it's not something that people are imagining. It was like, there's a couple of Black women that you're going to find, but for the most part, you're going to find, okay, Luciana Barreto, a lot of people are familiar with her, but it's almost like for every 10 white women that you see as a prominent journalist in Brazil, you're going to see maybe 1 or 0.5 are going to be Black women. So this is what she's talking about. Black women have always been, they want to change their image. Like, we're not just maids and cleaning lady and cooks. With the rise of affirmative action in Brazil, a lot of Black women are getting access to better lifestyles. They're getting more, let's say, careers outside of the areas that Brazil has always set aside for Black women. They belong in the kitchen is how Brazil seems to see Black women. So anyway, really, I don't know. It's very striking what Eliane Dias had to say in this particular video. And you can kind of understand where she's coming from when you look at the history and the rise of interracial unions in Brazil. I mean, even though interracial, there's always been a plan to eliminate Black people through racial mixture in Brazil, but it's only been, I'd say, people blame the soccer great Pelé for his relationships with non-Black women that inspired like millions of Black men to desire to have a white wife. Does he deserve all of the credit or the blame for this? Who's to say? All I can say is for years, what Black women seem to be saying seemed to be true. So anyway, that's why I wanted to talk about this today. What did you think about today's video? Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Click on the notification bell so that you know when I put up a new video. Let's get a conversation going in the comment section. Always love the comments. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post here at Black Brazil Today.